A visitor who never left. I was 18 years old when this happened. At the time, I was living at home with my parents, who had recently moved far out into the countryside. Their farm was part of a tiny rural cluster, about 7 farms on one road. That night, I was home alone with our dog, a large Labrador I was looking after until my parents came back the next day. It was around 11 p.m. I was lying on the upstairs couch with a movie playing quietly on the TV, half asleep and relaxed in the stillness of the house. Then 3 loud knocks shattered the silence. They came from the front door downstairs, the door directly at the bottom of the staircase leading up to where I was. The sound was sharp and deliberate, not hesitant, not accidental. My dog sprang out of his bed beside me and started barking immediately. I tried to calm him, but he was beyond listening. He bolted down the stairs and positioned himself in front of the door, barking and growling into the darkness. Outside, the courtyard was completely black. I stood halfway down the staircase, my pulse hammering in my ears, and called out, "Hello?" No reply, just silence. I called again, louder this time. Still nothing. The quiet that followed felt wrong, thick and watchful. After a moment that felt much longer than it was, I forced myself to move. I stepped down the rest of the stairs, my dog still tense at the door. Carefully, I opened it just enough to lean my head outside. There was nothing there. No lights, no movement, no footsteps fading away, only the dark courtyard and the cold night air. It felt like whoever or whatever had knocked had simply vanished. I shut the door quickly and locked every entrance in the house. My hands were shaking as I called my parents. They immediately contacted our neighbors, a couple who lived nearby. Within minutes they arrived. I explained what had happened, still trying to steady my voice. They decided to walk around the barns and check the property. Those 10 minutes felt endless. When they returned, they said they hadn't found anything. Still, they strongly suggested I come sleep in their guest room for the night. I told them it was probably just me overreacting if nothing had been found, but they kept insisting, more seriously than I expected, that it would be safer to come with them. I refused. I couldn't leave my dog alone. Before leaving, they told me to call immediately if anything else happened, no matter how small. When my parents returned the next day, they installed surveillance cameras outside the front door. They said it was to make me feel safer, especially since I was often home alone with the dog. A few months later, my parents were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. During the evening, I found myself talking with my female neighbor and thanked her again for coming over that night. Her expression shifted. She went quiet for a moment, like she was weighing whether to say what was on her mind. Then she told me she has to be honest with me. That night, shortly before my parents called her, she had been outside saying goodnight to her horses. The yard was completely still. No wind, no distant cars, nothing. That's when she heard it. Footsteps. Clear, deliberate footsteps crunching through the gravel in our courtyard. Not random, not hurried, slow, controlled, like someone was walking with purpose in the dark. She said the sound carried unnaturally well in the silence. Then the footsteps stopped, right there in the yard. She waited to hear them continue, to hear someone speak, a door, anything. But there was only a heavy, suffocating silence. And just moments later, my parents called her about the knocking. She told me she never heard those footsteps leave. The guy who followed me home. Okay, one time I was riding my dirt bike around my neighborhood, and I was like 3 blocks away from my house, and some guy was like watching me after my dirt bike was about to die, so I was walking into my house, and this guy started to follow me on my way home. When I saw him, I started to run with the bike, and he started to chase me. So it was only downhill till I get to my house, so with the last of my battery, I used it to get down. He saw me get home and left. Was he going to kidnap me or worse? That's the best I could do with that story. It took me like 5 takes to do it. It's one long run-on sentence. There's no punctuation until the end, which is the last sentence. Everything else is one sentence. This person is not very good at writing. And I'm sorry if it didn't make sense, guys, because it just doesn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense to anybody, really. Apparently they got chased, and they were on their dirt bike, but it died, and when they got home, the person stopped chasing them. Pretty eventful. Does this happen to you or not? Okay, so every year on January 19th, I have a weird dream. It's me in my house, somebody breaks in and ties me up in a chair. He then gets all of my family and kills them in front of me. All I hear is them screaming, and the guy goes to me and says, "You are next." And then I wake up at 3:33 a.m. and I just can't go to sleep. Every year this happens, I always wake up at the same time. Tell me if this means something or if this happens to you too. Again, guys, I'm so sorry. These people are idiots. Terrible writing. I think I was almost kidnapped. I learned about this when I asked my mother about the strange experience. So this was around late November or early December, and I was going to my first therapy appointment in years. The place was far away, so we needed to take the bus. My mother was with me, and it was absolutely cold outside, raining. We had to go to another bus stop to wait for a different transport to reach my destination. Something I'd like to bring up. I'm in my late 20s, but have a youthful look. I've been mistaken to be a teenager before. This will be important for later. So while my mother and I wait for the second bus, this man in a black hoodie comes up and starts talking, saying hello and whatnot. I was absolutely uninterested and just wanted the bus to come because I was freezing and didn't want to talk. But suddenly my mother steps in front and gives a blunt response to this guy. Afterwards, he backs off and walks along with his bike. I thought it was weird, but I got the sinking feeling when my mother says, "Get in front of me," in a serious tone. Obviously, I stand in front of her, while our bus has finally arrived and I get in first. A few days after that, I got curious and decided to ask my mother what that was all about. And what she told me still creeps me out. Apparently, the guy in the black hoodie was trying to talk to me directly. He wasn't paying any mind to her until she stepped up, giving some sort of look at him. The tone she used when she spoke to him was nowhere near cordial. It was serious, borderline threatening. But what she said next still disturbs me. After the guy effed off with his bike, my mother saw a van that would slow down near us. It gets worse, because she also saw a man just texting on his phone out in the cold rain. The man didn't have an umbrella, just texted on his phone. She mentioned the van circled around the area a few times and the man was still on his phone. Another thing to mention is I did see that man in the black hoodie come back again. I thought it was weird, wondering why the hell was this guy riding around this freezing ass weather in the same area. But after she explained, it made a lot more sense to me and I got much more paranoid after that. Which, to be honest, I didn't even think that was possible. Now, I can't say for certain whether this was an attempt of human trafficking, but there was just too many eerie coincidences for it to be anything else. I don't know what I saw, but I have pictures of it. I grew up in Missouri, the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. Moberly was just another dot on the map. Brick buildings, railroad tracks, cornfields stretching out until the sky swallowed them. I'd lived there my whole life. Gone to the same high school my parents did. Driven the same back roads since I was 14. That's probably why it took me so long to realize something was wrong. It started during my junior year. Late fall, when the sun went down too early and the air smelled like dead leaves and cold metal. I walked home most days instead of taking the bus. I'd cut through a shortcut behind an old abandoned building near the tracks. Everyone called it the feed mill, even though it hadn't been used in decades. One afternoon, I heard footsteps behind me. I slowed down. They slowed down too. I told myself it was just someone messing around. Kids from school like to scare each other back there, but the steps didn't sound right. They were uneven, like whoever was walking didn't know how long their stride was supposed to be. Sometimes I'd hear dragging, sometimes a sharp tap, like bone on concrete. I turned around. No one was there. The air felt thicker, like before a storm, and the silence pressed in on my ears. I hurried home, heart racing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me from just out of sight. After that, it happened more often. I'd catch movement in windows that reflected the street behind me, something tall and pale that vanished the second I looked directly at it. Teachers would call my name in the hallway, but when I answered, they'd swear they hadn't said anything. Once I heard my mom call me from downstairs while she was still at work. That's when I started losing sleep. The night I really saw it was after a football game. I was cutting through the same shortcut, hoodie pulled tight against the cold. The moon was bright enough that I could see the feed mill clearly, its broken windows like dark, empty eyes. Something stood beside it. It was shaped like a person, but wrong in every detail. Too tall, too thin. Its arms almost hung to its knees, and its head tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. Its skin looked stretched tight and pale, like it had never seen the sun, but somehow knew what a human was supposed to look like. It couldn't move. It shifted its weight, joints clicking softly, and when it stepped forward, I realized it had been trying to stand like a person and failing. Each step was a correction. Then it opened its mouth. "Hey." My voice. Exactly my voice. I felt sick. My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. The thing tilted its head further, studying me, and its face pulled into something that might have been a smile. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, wide and empty, like it didn't understand fear, only imitation. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my front door, fumbling with my keys, sobbing harder than I ever had. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That something was copying me? That it lived by the tracks? But sometimes when I walk home now, I hear footsteps behind me that match mine perfectly. And every once in a while, when I pass the feed mill, I see fresh footprints in the dust. They're human. Almost. Is it normal? I don't really know how to start this, but I feel like I need to share this. I don't really know if it's really weird or if it's something completely normal and I'm just worried for nothing, but I think it started when I was around 5. It started with the door. That one door is facing my entrance door. It's like an exit, you know? Well, I've always been petrified of that door, to the point where if we had gone for a walk and we had to go home, I would be sobbing because I was really scared of that door. And I, till this day, don't know exactly why. Because I didn't watch horror things, like scary movies or creepy stuff in general, since I come from a religious family, and these things were banned. And after that door, it just went downhill, being scared of the idea of sleeping alone because I felt things, saw things, heard things, and I ended up sleeping with my bed next to my parents until I was 10. All my childhood, I had horrible nightmares really often, like not normal scary nightmares of children my age. Then came 13 years old, one of the worst years of my life. From hearing people scream through my headphones, to hearing my mom's voice calling my name from outside the door, to seeing that creature at the corner of my room every now and then, to waking up having panic attacks, shaking, crying, and feeling someone behind me. Even the dreams started to get worse and worse, each and every one of them more horrific than the other. Sometimes about my family, sometimes about me. I would wake up in sweats, sometimes even crying. But I hid it all from my family. I would only share it with my lifelong best friend, whom words can't express how much I trust. Acting like everything was fine in front of my family, even though it was a battle every day not to look crazy or possessed for admitting all of the things that had been happening to me. Until one day, the night was unbearable. I woke up shaking so much I thought I was going to die. The unshakable feeling that someone or something was right behind me, watching me sleep and waiting for the right moment to kill me. I gathered all of my courage after a couple minutes that felt like hours, and I woke up my brother, who was sleeping next to my bed that night. I tapped his shoulder over and over to wake him up, and when he finally woke up, the view he saw must have been horrible. Me in sweat, sobbing, literally bawling my eyes out, asking him, "Is there someone behind me? I'm scared." He told me no, brushed me off, and went back to sleep. The next morning, he told my mom, and she asked me if everything was all right and told me, "You just have to pray. It's in your head." The thing is, that's all I've been doing for these past years. Pray. Pray for it to stop, but it just seems to get worse. A couple months ago, we moved to a new house, and I had a little hope that maybe it would finally stop. But no, I still hear those voices, see things from the corner of my eyes at the same places every time. And one day, I was in the stairs outside the apartment and I heard the door from my mom's room literally fly open and close super hard, 2 to 3 times over and over. There was no one in the house. They were all outside, and all of the windows were closed. At night, I hear people walking, like on top of my room, and I thought, oh, it has to be the neighbors, until I realized we were on the highest floor of the building, a really high one. It was human walking. I would recognize animals very easily. It was 2 by 2 with a rhythm. I'm sharing this because I don't know if it's legitimate to be scared or if I'm just making things up, and it's not that big of a deal. Knowing I'm pretty rational as a person, I don't know what to think. Sorry for the grammar, English is not my first language, and sorry if it doesn't make sense, I don't usually write on Reddit.